I did that last week. I insult Paul, and I had all these great comebacks to what you're saying on there, and I had myself muted. Last week, I started off. I went for like a total of like a minute on a soliloquy with no one attending or no one being able to hear me. So we are actually trying to stream across all of our platforms. So we got YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, as well as Zoom. Zoom is the problem child because Zoom does not integrate with StreamYard yet. So while I wait for Skip to join here, I want to talk about today is what a lot of people think of as a little bit of a boring topic. Oh, there's Damien and Richard coming in. And it's control families. I'm not sure how many of you over there like really know what control families are, or if they're something that you live and breathe by, but they are an important topic for any MSP, whether or not you are security focused or not. Yes, Skip. Skip is backstage. Hold on a second. Let's let him in. I'm trying to get used to all this. So let me let him in. There he is. It helps when I add you to the stream there, Skip.
There we go. I was like, I'm here.
So what I'm doing today is I'm streaming everybody, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this screen. I think so. If I maximize this, and then I share the Zoom, everybody should see everything. This is crazy. All right, let's try this, people. Let's see how this works. My goal is to get you all off of Zoom and into StreamYard so that you're actually like engaging on Facebook, engaging on LinkedIn. We have a really great active community, and I'd like people to see that. So what we have today, again, is we're talking about control families. Control families are the ability for you to validate what you're trying to do with the clients. You can tell them till you're blue in the face that they need this thing, they need two-factor, they need to have a backup plan, they need a disaster recovery plan because it'll help them. It's a different thing to say, hey, all of these controls that have been agreed upon by either NIST or by the banks, PCI, or by medical companies have agreed these are extremely important things to have. And that's your compliance. We should have had Tim Golden on today. And the idea there is you have a third party, somebody outside, somebody with credentials backing up what you are saying. But if you don't know how to have that conversation, if you don't know how to relate to a control family, you can't really say with authority why I should do this. Yep. So you can look at like NIST is a great way to start. If you're a CIS person, that's great too. CS is really easy to understand. I know NIST. It's what I lived, eat, and breathed for like 10 years of my career. So like you can go down into the NIST control families, and I can kind of throw this over here so everybody can see.
Well, while you're bringing that up, Adam, so I ran into this personally many years ago, and we're working with our customers, and obviously we want them to be on a secure platform, and we want some standards. So we go to build those. Now, I'm kind of techie, and I had my hand at security years ago, but I know I'm not really the guy to put this out there. So I go and sit down with our in-house security engineer, and I'm like, okay, we need to put some things together. And of course, he's got his opinion on things, and he's talking about some of these different ideas, but I quickly realized it's like, wow, who are our customers supposed to listen to? Us, right? But even then, from a responsibility and from an ownership perspective, do I want to take on that idea that, hey, this is my security stance and it's the best thing you need to do? All right. That just sounds like one of those things that someone's going to, creep up and chop you off at the knees. So the great thing about adopting a standardized control family is you get to say, hey, this is an industry standard. And so it's not just a way for you to do a CYA sort of thing. You really get to follow a broader skill set and, leverage some technical expertise that you may or may not have, or at least additional expertise to your organization, and pick one, follow it. As Adam said, we've got NIST. I'll say it again because I'm not going to give up on it. We are still working on CIS. Life, if just life would hold on a little bit. We will get that. But regardless, I mean, if you're in Australia, we've got the Cyber Essentials 8 there. Pick one and run from that and use that as a baseline to provide the structure that you need.
Yeah. And again, it's validation. You already know most of this stuff, but can you organize it into thoughts? Can you give somebody, hey, why should I care? And so if you Google like the NIST control families, you have like access control, awareness and training, audit and responsibility or accountability. Go down those control families, invest in understanding them at a high level. And what you'll end up with is the ability to talk to your client with authority. It's not just your opinion anymore. It is now outside sources. And this helps drive profits because now that firewall you want to sell them so badly that has been a pain in your butt for the past 3 years. Now there's this outside entity saying, look, if you don't do this, you're not following best practices for the industry.
Right.
Yeah, you have this control body. That's why compliance is enforced for certain industries, like for medical industries, for payment card industries. These things came from a need to set a baseline of like, look, they're not listening to their technology people. So we need to force them to think in terms of what is basic responsibility look like. This isn't like a reach. This is basic responsibility. If you want to do business with a payment card, if you want to do business with one of the big three, you have to follow the PCI standards, or they will not work with you. Because you need to have these things. And NIST is doing that for everybody, or CIS is doing that for everybody, saying, hey, look, here's a generic baseline that everybody should follow. And we're going to make recommendations and see, hey, for access control, what do you have? How are you controlling access to your system? Are your admin accounts secured? They're not asking anything that you already don't know. What is nice about these things, though, is sometimes you learn something new, like, oh, that is a really good idea. I should be doing an awareness and training program that includes disaster recovery. Like I'm doing awareness and training for phishing, but I'm not covering these other ideas. And now that's opportunities for you. Like, yeah, could you walk into a room and talk about how to work from home in case of a flood, in case of a hurricane? Yes, you could. Can you talk with authority on best practices to stay secure at home or at a remote location? Yes, you can. But it's not top of mind for you often because you guys are too busy break fixing. And that's fine. You're busy people. You can't be thinking of everything all the time. But control families allow you to keep that what actually is true for me. And right this week, we've got Black Hat going on, I believe, this week. DEF CON is this week, which I used to go to. I loved it. And I never went to Black Hat. I was a DEF CON guy. I don't know if anybody else listening here goes to any of those. Still working on getting all the comments here. I can't see comments when the screen's full like this. So, Richard's probably making fun of me in the background. I don't even know it. So I like control families. It wasn't until about halfway through my career when I really became familiar with them. So like late 2000s. But when I did it first, I was like, oh, more paperwork.
Yep.
And then eventually I started buying it. Okay, that's a really good idea. Oh, that's a bunch of crap. When you're the engineer who has to do the evidence gathering for control families, it's easy to stop caring. If you've ever had to do that. But if you really start thinking through what the control families are for, you start thinking, okay, yeah, because we're all morons. We got to have some kind of litmus test as to what an actual good security posture looks like.
Well, and on that, what is it trying to do? So, some of the complaints I've heard about various control families is they don't tell me what I need to do, right? Somebody wants a list, 1 to 99, configure this, do this. All right. And that's not the goal. that's also a really, really good thing, because it allows you to look at this control group and understand, all right, what are we trying to do? All right, it may not be just plainly obvious, because they tend to write those in very, you can tell they got lawyers involved, right? So there's not a real clear objective there sometimes, but it's not that hard to find. Dig down one level, and you're the technical person, you will understand, oh, they're trying to do this. All right. Now, once you understand that, you have the ability to match that with all of your standard stack solutions. All right. We've got this product, we've got that product, or maybe you identify something that you don't have, but now you have a venue. Now you've got an opportunity to sell something that you would like to do, because it's identified in a standardized control group. And so I can do that now. I've got a reason, I've got a marketing deal on that. So it is not a, dumb monkey sort of process to get that out there. It is, guidance on those general areas.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember there is, when you talk to your client, here's what you go in. This is how it keeps you secure. This is how it's going to drive profits. You walk into your client and say, do you just want baseline technology? And that's a break fix shop. Or do you want to be held to a standard? And ask them that question flat out. Do you want to be held to a standard? We highly recommend CIS or NIST or Cybersecurity Essentials 8 for you people down in the South. And we want to talk about what that's going to mean if we start working towards compliance here, if we start working and following a control family. So you tell your client, if we get held to a standard, we will pick a standard and we will run with it. And what that means is, I'm going to show you the gaps. So in our tool, we have the ability to measure up against the NIST overview. So we're going to do a quick assessment. We're going to spend like 30 minutes going over what the baseline of the cybersecurity NIST overview looks like. At the end of this, you will see all of these gaps, and it's going to be horrifying. But now allow the client to pick what they want to work on first.
Yes.
Walk them through that. Like, here are all of the security gaps as identified by NIST for you. You can even charge for the service. Like, hey, we will measure you up against a security baseline. We're going to do NIST. It's going to cost $500 to do the overview. We'll come back and you will have a gap analysis against a national standard that you can say, oh, we're not doing too bad. Or most likely, holy crap, here are all the things we're missing. And if that one over the DR plan, we haven't tested our backups in 2 years. We haven't validated backups. And it's like, oh crap, if you don't check that and you get ransomware tomorrow, you're going to be rebuilding this entire system. The MSP is going to make a ton of money, which is great, because I'm going to have to rebuild everything from scratch. That's a lot of billable hours. Or we can go and test these backups once a year. That costs you an extra $500 on your plan.
Yep. Well, on those things that it identifies, don't pick the priority ones. All right. There's probably going to be some that you just know. All right. That, we're tracking this or whatever. We know we need to do this element. So there may be a very few that you push out there as priorities, but in general, you want your clients to pick the priority ones, and you don't want them trying to understand that control group. All right. So what you need to go through is, you read that, you know what it means, you're understanding, you go, all right, this is going to impact this area of your business. And you may not know all the nitty gritty details. That's okay. All right. But highlight that it impacts your remote employees, or this one impacts your credit card transactions. So identify those, then sit down with your customers and let them make business decisions. All right. Yeah. Between the two examples I just quoted out, the remote work, they may think, yeah, that's kind of something we need to work on. But the credit card transactions, if that's not working right, we're in deep trouble. All right. So we've got to prioritize that, obviously. Right. So let your client decide. That takes the burden off of you, but it also gets buy-in from your clients. Yeah. They realize this is a priority. So they're willing to close on that project and get it done, which makes less work for you, pushing, trying to get them to sign off on deals that they don't really understand.
Yeah. So this is where control families, you don't have to be an expert. I really want to reinforce, you don't have to be an expert in control families, but the gap analysis will help you identify projects that maybe you didn't even know about. And that's why we built our templates in the software for architecture, service, and risk, is because sometimes you just forget, oh crap, I haven't looked into this thing in a while. It's not because you're not capable, it's just that you're busy and you top of mind. Most of you are in firefighting mode 90% of your day. And so using something like a control family keeps that baseline. It's that mirror in which we look at ourselves so that we can see where we need to go. When I went through our SOC audit, like, I'm a security minded individual. Like, I've been doing this most of my career. Even when I went to the SOC audit, I came across things that I forgot about or didn't know about. I'm like, oh yeah, I should be doing that. Oh yeah, I forgot I need to do the employee onboarding, and these are the check marks I need to do. Who knows if Skip is, crazy? Maybe I didn't look into him hard enough when I hired him on. But the idea is you want to have something to remind you, hey, here's your best practices. Yep. So we made best practices on architecture audits, service audits, and security audits. And for security audit, we didn't come up with something new. We used something that was already existing out there so that we wouldn't forget, like, it's not on us. This is a NIST standard. You're holding your people to it. When it comes to architecture and service. Yeah. Mike's the peanut gallery is busy on Zoom there, Skip.
Oh, okay. All right.
Nothing to see here. Move along. These are not the droids you're looking for. And, I like being reminded most of the time, these are things that I need to remember to do. And your clients are the same way. They're busy running their company. They know that you're just another vendor coming in and telling them they need to buy things. Just like you have vendors that reach out to you in email and reach out to you on LinkedIn and reach out to you on phone calls every day asking you to buy their solution, which is going to fix all your problems. Instead, if you say, hey, look, according to NIST, your firewall is not covering everything you need to have done. And this is putting you at risk for a ransomware attack or a multitude of other ones here in the next few months as things pick up towards the holidays. Holidays are a really busy time for hacking. I really want to help keep you safe. I really think that we need to attack your access controls and mitigate them through a new FortiGate 200E or whatever it is going to be. And when you talk to your client like that, like, I've identified this one, then here's another high priority one, your backup. We had a really busy hurricane season last year, and we had some close scares, and we didn't have any way for you to a cold site. Let's go ahead and talk this through. Here's what's going to cost. This is going to cost $250 for me to do this thing. Are you okay with us doing that? The client's like, oh, that's it? Yeah, all I need to do is pay for 2 hours of time for my engineers to go through and back up and restore a thing. Or if you're like, hey, if you would like a cold site, I can look into that. There's a number of them in town. Whereas if there's a hurricane hits, we can restore your data center to another location. All I need is, and then you can quote out the service. This mitigates the entire thing. So if there's ever a hurricane, if there's ever some kind of act of God that takes your business out, that we can be up and running in this few days. Is that okay with you? They say, no, we'd like to be faster than that. I'm like, okay, in that case, you want a hot site. Here's how much a hot site's going to cost.
Yes.
You're no longer talking about these random things. You're now talking about what the recommendations of a secure baseline is. You're securing against these risks. Does the client care? They may say, you know what? In case of a hurricane, we've all got our laptops. Well, let's go home. Like, well, one thing you may not know about is that you have a file server still on-prem that we have not migrated out to OneDrive. If you want to make that your backup scenario, we need to do that migration out to the cloud for OneDrive. Oh yeah, we could finish that.
Well, let me offer a word of caution here. Don't get too wrapped up in the price. You may look at that and go, "Oh wow, that's ridiculously priced." Okay, and maybe it is. I mean, you want a reasonable solution, but even the reasonable solutions may be very expensive. Let your clients make the decision on that.
Yep.
And you approach that conversation not trying to push it on them, but say, hey, I have this information for you. I want you to be able to make a decision. Is this an appropriate expense to protect your business? Is this something you want to do? Personal experience with me, we were working with a large company, and we were doing big deals, right? These were not small projects, but we would still run up against things and go, wow, that seems like a lot of money. Now, this was a pretty good sized company, so they actually had some internal IT resources, and they had actually kicked off a process where they went through and then they did a discovery on their cost of the business for downed IT services. And the big number, if IT across the company was down, they had a $200,000 a day cost to that. All right. Well, now once we realize that, the things that we thought were expensive, that's a 60 grand, sort of project. We look at that and go, if we don't go down for a day, that 60 grand seems like nothing. And so in the perspective of what's important to your clients, you may find yourself very surprised. You may be looking at a 5 or even a 6-figure sort of price tag on something and think that's way too much, but your clients go, hey, if I can't do this, it's my livelihood. I could lose all that I've gained over the years. So they may have a reason to spend that money. You just don't know because you haven't talked to them about it.
Yeah, Paul's mentioning, what are your compensating controls? And as an IT provider, your job is to identify these gaps. Your job is not to mitigate them. And let me say that really clear. This makes a lot of people angry when I talk about this. Your job is to identify and disseminate information. Your job is not to mitigate. Now, if they pay you to mitigate something, then you can say, okay, now it's my job.
Yep.
So if they say, if you don't get yourself a cold site, given how your environment's set up, if a hurricane hits or tornado hits or some other earthquake or whatever, another pandemic, you're kind of going to be up a creek. And the business may say, you know what, we can't afford it. We don't care.
That's right.
Say, okay, so you're going to accept this risk, and you slide the piece of paper across the table, or you send the email saying,
right,
if you're going to accept this risk, I just want to let you know that I told you about it and I told you how to fix it, and you decided to accept it. So when the newspapers come calling, I'm going to pull up this email.
Yeah.
And that's how you talk about this. It's on the business to accept risk. Now, you as an MSP may decide that this client isn't worth the risk.
Mm-hmm.
That they're taking on, like they're doing too many things that are going to burn you and cause you problems down the road. In that case, that is your call as a business owner to say, look, you are too risky to do business with. I'm going to cancel our service. You're going to fire the client, and you're going to move on. But if you never identify in the MSA, if you never talk about this stuff, you will always be in the unknown space. Yep. And that is going to cost you security. You might get hacked through your client. It's not like this doesn't happen, people. There was a big one a couple of years ago.
I heard of it.
You can say, oh, well, my client refused to put this mitigating control in place, and that's not your fault. But if that client came back through a back channel and got into your systems and then now can access all your other clients, that's on you. You knew, and now you're in a heap of trouble.
Yep.
So you have to decide when your clients are worth it. So I've actually had in the corporate world, and this is going to probably make a lot of you just like the color drain from your bodies, where I say, well, if we don't know about the gap, then we don't have to explain it. Plausible deniability is a very real thing, and it creeps me out.
It's miserable.
If we don't discover the vulnerability, we can't say we knew about it when it happens. Think about that. That is not a security posture. That is not security advice. That is political advice, and that's a PR situation.
Yes, political. That's right. It's not technical advice. It's political.
Like, look, I am going through a discovery process. I'm going to find out what I can, and we will mitigate, accept, or reduce whatever we're going to do. And we have to identify and do it. But you, as a provider, your job is to identify. Right. First and foremost, if you look at your controls, the first thing you got to do is you got to audit your clients. And whether it's for a security control or for technology that you want to do a gap analysis. Gap analysis is important, but you have to know what you have first. Inventory management, asset management starts first.
Yep.
Once you know that, you can say, oh, you need a SAN, you need a firewall, you need a scanner bed. Now you've done your gap analysis. They don't have these things. Do they want them? Same thing with security. Here are the list of security vulnerabilities by NIST standards or by CIS standards. Which ones do we want to work on first?
And so I want to bring up the risk to your business element, because I think you have a good idea. You know that they're a mess. You know that that's a problem and you're working on it, right? But how big a mess is it? How big a problem is it going to be? It's going to impact the clients, yes, but it is going to impact you also. Now, maybe there's not a situation where you're going to be reverse hacked or something like that, but hey, if this goes down, I'm going to have to pull an engineer and we're going to spend the next 10 days working 10-hour days to get this up and running. And the way their contract is structured right now, that's all going to be on me. All right. That clearly hits your bottom line. So you've got to be able to look at your clients and not only address their business risks, but what is the risk to your business as well. And if you find one, like, you guys are just not tenable. If something goes bad, you're going to break me and I can't support you anymore. So you've got to either write a clause or get them to buy the stuff.
If they fall under a compliance standard, have that in your MSA. Mm-hmm. As Mike said over here, is like, had this happen with a medical practice in January 2022, did not want to stay HIPAA compliant. So he said, no, thank you. Some things are not worth the risk, people.
That's it.
Even if you're desperate for clients, some things aren't worth the risk. If you've got a medical practice that says we don't want to be HIPAA compliant and you're going to support them in that, back away.
Yeah. The lawyers never sue one person. There's one name at the top of the list, and there's usually a lot of others underneath it.
So we want to paint this picture for you guys outside of the threat analysis. The control families are there to help you. Google NIST control families. If you don't know about this stuff, ask ChatGPT, for crying out loud. It'll explain it to you. Yeah. It's a good time. You can sit down and you can get yourself familiar with the gap analysis. You can get yourself familiar with basic control families, and you can reference these to your clients when you want some authority to what you're saying. Like, look, you may not want me to put two-factor on all of your external facing websites or controls. However, per NIST compliance 803.11, reference AC2, whatever it is, don't know off the top of my head, and say, according to them, you have to be this way. If you don't want to follow that compliance, then we're going to step back. Even in your MSA, you can say, we, as best as possible, follow the NIST or CIS best practices. If you decide to refuse a best practice, we have to have an acceptance clause from your firm. Mm-hmm. And we reserve the right to cancel policy based upon which control family is not being followed. It's great, and put some clauses in there and say, if we've identified a control and it gets exploited, we are not liable for release of liability. You have that in there. Right. Ask your attorney to put that in your MSA. So that is how you use control families to make money. That's how you use control families to stay secure. You can use control families to identify potential opportunities and reinforce them with a third-party backing you saying this needs to be done. You can use control families to show your client where they're secure and to help yourself understand where your client's security risks are. They're very useful. You don't have to use them as just paperwork. You can use them as a really great best practices and how to move forward with your clients.
Yeah. Well, just understand understand the impact. I think a lot of the things that Adam and I have been saying, you're like, wow, that might cost me some customers. And I work really hard to get those customers. I'm trying to grow my business. And you're telling me all this stuff that may shrink my customer base. Yes, that is true. But you need to understand, growing your business is a goal. But what happens with the risk or the liability that you take on? if something goes bad, what is it going to do to the net sum of your business? Is it going to hurt your reputation? Are you going to lose even more customers? Is it going to cost you so much money that you're not going to be able to make payroll for the next 2 pay periods? What's that going to do to the staff that you've been trying to build up? There are a lot of personal impacts to your organization that you need to be aware of that are affected and controlled by your clients. And if you're just kind of going on gut instinct there, something's going to sneak up and bite you. You need a structured approach to say, hey, we're managing our risk. You can't eliminate risk, all right, but you can manage them. Your client needs to manage them, and you need to see your client's risk as items that you need to manage as well.
Yeah, and kind of follow up over here is that it might shrink your customer base, but it will alleviate a lot of headaches. You're right there, Mike. Sometimes you can identify a toxic client by applying security controls to them. So maybe it's a hidden fourth gem here. You can identify a toxic client by the ones that do not want to follow best practices via a security control set. And so that you can say, where are we going and what baseline do I want to put here before I, as an MSP, run myself into the ground trying to support an unhealthy client. And then Paul says also NIST defines what a user is, which is great for MSAs. So you can understand like how to charge your clients. All right. With that, this is a great topic today. Thank you for being with us while we work on this new technology. If you're on the Zoom, please start joining us on Facebook and LinkedIn. There's a whole bunch of you on Zoom, and I want you to get out to one of these other platforms because it's much more manageable through StreamYard. But I know I've got a lot of you subscribed to this in the Zoom event because we've been going on 5 years on community updates.
Yep.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you later.
See ya.